And he is sending a signal to every other appointee, which is you do not buckle to these little nigglings because they're always going to be trying to do this. You stand firm. You're part of the
You're right. You're right, Heather.
And one of the bedrock principles of American free speech is that you can't just base it on the fact that you're offended by something, because there's always going to be somebody who finds something offensive. And that's part of the myth of hate speech, right? Because it's a definition that sounds good in principle, but there's no objective definition, and it slides into speech that I hate.
The reason Trump was elected was not that he was likable, but that he was the biggest SOB in the room. He was the SOB for the American people who is going to cut through that Gordian knot of interest group politics and get stuff done. They're thinking of this as a larger economic issue. They're thinking of it not just as a crime issue. They're thinking, why are these cities protecting these folks? And it's politics. So tomorrow I should have a piece, I hope tomorrow, in the Wall Street Journal op-ed section. If the Republicans are serious about wanting to accomplish not only achieving repeal and getting the votes they need, but hopefully actually going after all those regulations that make the cost so high, what they need to do is what the law said it should do, which is apply to Congress. Congress is presently exempt. Either they're totally exempt or they get heavy, heavy subsidies. They don't feel this law the way the rest of America does. If they do, you would find a very different profile in their willingness to vote for repeal and replace.
Yeah.
They've made it pretty clear that the home interest deduction and the charitable deduction are pretty much sacrosanct, but everything else is on the table. It sounds like they have some agreement on how to do this. They understand that it's gotten to be this unwieldy, complicated behemoth that is not very conducive to productive reform. Tax reform is hard. The last time we did it was 1986, and it's difficult. But my understanding is that they've got fair agreement. Because if you look at where the Democratic vote projections come from, it comes from immigrants, particularly undocumented immigrants. That's why you have such a pushback on voter registration and making sure that people who are voting are legal to vote. Isn't one of the big challenges that you're going to have with millennials is that this is in large measure an instant gratification generation, that they really believe that everything should work out immediately for them. So there's this long-term challenge. And the second problem that I think you might be looking at if you're a company selling investments is that they don't believe that bad things should happen to them. So you've already seen, for example, Liberty Mutual say that they have accident forgiveness because, you know, everybody should be forgiven for their mistakes. And that's really appealing to millennials. I want to disagree. It's being characterized as throwing Jeff Sessions under the bus. He doesn't throw Jeff Sessions under the bus as Attorney General. What he did was he threw under the bus his decision to recuse himself, which Trump is justified in being really TO'd at this. There is a case to be made that the laws have changed, and there are some people who are in prison under laws and penalties that don't presently exist. But the thing to keep in mind is that almost all of these laws exist not first and foremost to punish people, but to protect people. There are people who are actively hurt by these drug dealers, most of them poor people in these communities where they're going to be moving back into. And so if you are serious about helping people, then you have to always keep that in mind. We do have pro-choice Republicans, and I think part of the reason this is awkward for Democrats is that their pro-choice constituency is so vocal and so strong and such a part of their identity. But the problem with abortion is that in this country we have reduced it to two polarities. And in fact, if you look at the American people, there's a lot more nuance on the issue. Countries like Russia, which are adversaries on some things, but they're allies on others. And remember, a lot of the information we had about the Boston bomber, even though we weren't smart enough to follow up on it, came from Russia before the bombing ever actually even happened. If you think about it, if you move to other countries, it doesn't matter how long you're there, you're still not from there. You're not a Frenchman, you're not a whatever, because geography defines it. Here, ideas define it. Adopting certain cultural attitudes makes you an American, and it doesn't matter where you're from or who your parents are, because it celebrates your capacity, your human dignity, your potential as an individual. It understands it doesn't come from government, it comes from the people, and it gets those things ordered properly, and that was the genius of our founding and what we're focusing on protecting here.